Welcome, everybody. My name is Sarah Sims, and I'm the manager of continuing education here at the Brown School at Washington University in St. Louis. Thank you all for joining us for today's Open Classroom program. Open Classroom is the Brown School's virtual and free professional development series. Beyond Open Classroom, we have a large suite of continuing education classes available to anybody. So if you're looking for CEUs or you just want some deeper learning, I invite you to check out our website, brownschool.wustl.edu, under the Resources and Initiative tabs. We offer workshops on almost a year-round basis and almost every week. So there's something for everybody, and I will drop a link in the chat. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items for folks. First, this is a Zoom webinar format, which just means that we can't see or hear you. But as you can probably notice, the chat is open and we really do want to know who's here. We'd love to say hello. And then also, we are very happy to take your comments and questions. We'll do a Q&A at the end, but you can leave a comment or a question at any time throughout the presentation. We'll also be live streaming on YouTube, so you can share that with anybody who wasn't able to join the Zoom today. So now I'd like to welcome and introduce my colleague and our presenter for today, Dr. Ruopeng An. He is an associate professor and faculty lead in public health sciences here at the Brown School. His research focuses on developing a robust knowledge base and policy recommendations to combat obesity and, by assessing the impact of different interventions on weight outcomes. With over 200 peer-reviewed journal publications, Dr. An is a very prolific author and has been recognized as one of the top 2% most cited scientists by Elsevier. His research has been featured in Time, the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, Reuters, USA Today, Bloomberg, Forbes, The Atlantic, The Guardian, Fox, NPR, and CNN, which is kind of basically everything. He was elected to be a fellow of the American College of Epidemiology in 2018. He teaches applied machine learning and deep learning courses, which attracts a high caliber of graduate students from across the WashU campus and our medical school. He also leads our AI series for Open Classroom, as well as a professional certificate in AI learning. So when he is going to facilitate that professional certificate this fall, I'm going to drop a link in the chat for that. We don't have dates yet, but it is happening. So you can use the link to sign up to learn when registration is available. Great. So today, Dr. An is here to present part 2 of how to write effective ChatGPT prompts to boost research productivity. If you missed part 1, you can view a recording of that on our Open Classroom website or YouTube channel, which I'll put a link to that in the chat as well. But right now, I'm going to stop talking and hand it over to Dr. An. So please join me in welcoming him.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah and Zizi, for hosting this event. So there has been a long-winded talk because this is the second part of the presentation. I really appreciate that you come to the first session, but if not, as Sarah mentioned, you can always watch the video recordings on YouTube channel. And now let's get started. So let me share my screen. And so the talk is going to be 2-part today. The first part is going to be short, basically refreshing what we talked about in the previous session, and then move directly to how we can use ChatGPT in our daily research activities. And then I'll move on to a Word document that we have a lot of examples, because I think the best way is not to talk about the theory. And there's not actually a lot of theories around it because ChatGPT was just established and become well known in the last couple of months. So, but really our team and myself have been working with ChatGPT for quite some time to experiment with its functionalities, limitations, etc. So we got a lot of hands-on experiences. So I want to take the time to share some of them. So let me move on to the first part of the presentation. So if you have taken the previous presentation, hopefully you remember that when we talk about ChatGPT interface, we are primarily interested in using the ChatGPT Plus version. So it is a paid version. The payment is $20 per month, but it's really worth it because our team has been testing actually many large language models. For example, the Google Bird model, the Meta models, the models hosted on Hugging Face, and also, of course, the GPT 3.5 model as well. However, none of those models actually satisfy our requirement, our need to do serious research. Of course, those models are really helpful to deal with daily issues and probably give you a lot of inspirations on many pertinent issues, but to really boost your research productivity and make sure that the output is what you need, what is inspiring, what can be really helpful in your research, we would highly recommend about the GPT-4, which now is only accessible through the ChatGPT Plus. Well, I have to declare I have no whatever interest, conflict of interest regarding any of the products. So I mentioned that purely because our team have tested so many, and we finally settled down with GPT-4 because that is the only model, as far as our knowledge tells, that can really help you to do research. Okay, so in the previous session, we talked about 10 essential principles of prompt engineering. So prompt engineering is the way that you use natural language to interact and communicate with large language models. And just to refresh your memory about those 10 principles, the first one is to be specific and clear in your prompt. Second is to break down complex questions into simpler parts so it's easier for machine to understand. Third is to experiment with different prompt formulations. Fourth is to set context and provide instructions. So very much like you are working with a graduate student, so you want your research idea and instructions to be as clarified as possible. And you want to ask for step-by-step explanations of pros and cons, which is called train of thought. It is a specific prompt engineering method that we apply often to help the machine think critically. The sixth is to request for sources and citations, which can somehow ground the machine not to hallucinate. The seventh is to ask for alternative viewpoints, for example, arguments as well as counter arguments, so the machine can practice critical thinking, but at the same time, give you a more comprehensive and holistic understanding of the research question. The eighth is to use constraints to control response length or format. Some of you may have interacted with ChatGPT a lot, so know how chatty it is because it's built for communication. But sometimes we don't want the ChatGPT to be too chatty because we just want to go to the essence, right? In that case, you can use constraint to control the response. And the ninth principle is to provide examples. We call it few-shot learning, basically provide a few examples for machine to learn. And you often would be surprised how effective a few examples are going to make to allow the machine to understand your request. Thinking about how to teach a baby about the elephant, right? You don't train the baby with thousands of pictures or videos. What you do is you provide maybe one or two pictures in maybe referring to a storybook, and then one day you bring the baby to the zoo and the baby is going to recognize, wow, that's an elephant there, right? Amazingly. So that is called few-shot learning. A few examples could be enough. And the 10th principle is to encourage critical thinking and exploration, and we'll showcase how you do that with the machine. So those are the guiding principles, and we've also talked in the previous lecture is that really the 10 principles individually may not be that powerful. The real power or the queen of prompt engineering is to creatively integrate and combine those principles together. And this is what we are going to show today. And then the question for this session is, how can ChatGPT help with different stages of scientific research? So if we list the 10 stages of research, the first could be to identify research topics and generate research questions, right? Because you can't do anything without a research question. And the second, if you have a research question, then you need to formulate hypotheses. And then very likely you have to understand the literature a lot better before you devote yourself into any of the hypotheses. And the way you are familiarizing with the literature is probably do a literature review. And the best of the kind is systematic review. And then after the review, you know the limitations and the gaps of the existing research. And so you are going to select the appropriate research design and methodology. And after that, you develop your research instrument and tools based on your specific research design, your specific research method. And after that, of course, people take a long time to do data collection and management, no matter it's existing data or first-hand data. It takes effort to find the data sources, to collect the data from the patients or the interviewees. And after that, well, you have to clean your data, put your data into analysis to be able to interpret the data patterns, maybe identifying the treatment effect and the impact of exposure to some kind of health behavioral outcomes. And then the A stage would be you need to write papers. After you've identified for example, the treatment effect, then you have to wrap it up with a scientific publication. And then, of course, the very unlikely your paper is going to be accepted as it is. I've almost never had this luxury experience. So you are going to get feedback from picky reviewers, and you have to address those comments raised by the reviewers, which is, of course, very fair. So that is the peer review process, right? So you need to respond to those reviews. And after that, hopefully your paper gets published. Then you can prepare for presentations and communicating your research findings through various dissemination efforts. For example, getting interviews from media, posting your study findings through social media, doing policy brief, and etc. Okay. So basically, what I want to convince you, hopefully by providing some examples, is that ChatGPT can help you to different degrees of all the 10 listed research stages. So of course, that is not something we can cover. Even though I offer 10 talks as a theory, we still really can't cover all of them. That is just not possible because of the space, because the time we have. So the good news is I'm writing a book entitled Supercharge Your Research Productivity with ChatGPT, a practical guide in which we are going to comprehensively go into each of the aforementioned research stages to provide you concrete examples of how you can use ChatGPT to do any of that. So I'm still in the stage of actively developing and writing this book. It's half done, but it's not done yet. And I will definitely let you know when the book is finished and published, and hopefully by the next couple of months. Okay. So today we are going to do is I'm going to switch gear to a Word document that I extracted some of the examples from the book to highlight and hopefully inspire you about some ways you could communicate with ChatGPT to address some of the research stages pertaining questions. Of course, we can't really cover all the practical examples or the stages, but hopefully that would give you enough to taste and enough to think about. So let me switch to the Word file. So I apologize that it looked a little wordy because, well, that is really we are talking about, we are not using toy examples. So here we are showing really working examples, working prompts that allow you to interact or communicate very deeply with ChatGPT. And some of the questions can go on for pages, right? But that is the real practice. It's not a toy example per se. This is the way, if you are a serious researcher, this is the way that you communicate research ideas with ChatGPT and hopefully get some inspirations. Okay? So let's start with the research topic formation. So here, as the title suggested, I'm going to provide you a few examples, a few example prompts together with ChatGPT response regarding how we discover research topics and framing research questions through discussion with ChatGPT. And also, I have to emphasize all the ChatGPT responses come from the ChatGPT Plus version interacting with GPT-4 model, not 3.5 model, because, well, simply put, that GPT 3.5 is not powerful to do this kind of work. Okay. So the first prompt, and almost always a good prompt for especially junior researchers, masters and doctoral students who are just starting your academic journey, you have some weak research ideas or research focus, but you haven't been specialized in a specific topic, right? So in this case, I can't really remember how many times I was asked by junior researchers and graduate students about how you come up with the research topic, right? So what I often talk about, there are four sources. The first one, number one, of course, read literature reviews, right? That's where you get inspirations, you know what's going on in this research field. And the second is to communicate, to talk with senior researchers, your peers, others that can inspire you, right? Especially people from different disciplines. The third one I would recommend is that you pay attention to news, news articles, so that you get probably some inspiration from what's going on, what are the trendy topics there, and maybe you can develop a topic from there. And then finally is personal observations, right? Because in our daily life, we probably encounter something that inspires us. But now I want to add ChatGPT to the list, and I would probably prioritize ChatGPT to be top of the list. So that's the what do I mean, and whether it's an exaggeration or not. Okay, so we start with a first prompt. The first prompt is, first you need to declare who are you, because you want to know, last time we talked about role playing, right? So you want ChatGPT to play a role so that the ChatGPT is going to know, well, what kind of response are you looking for? So I say, as a university researcher, my area of expertise is in the social determinant of health, very broad, right? And especially I'm interested in exploring the correlation between adverse child experiences and the development and severity of major depressive disorder, also known as major depression. Okay, so this is my broad research topic. I have some interest in this, but I don't have a lot of idea. Okay. And then I tell ChatGPT that I'm not well versed in the latest research and advancement in this field, and I would appreciate the ChatGPT's help in identifying innovative research topics by providing me with 10 potential research questions. So you don't need to be shy because ChatGPT loves to chat. So if you think, well, one research question probably is not what I need, I want to browse 10 questions, right? So feel free to ask. And then I asked ChatGPT to provide 10 potential research questions, and along with a brief explanation for each. Okay? And I also remind, well, all these 10 questions, of course, are going to relate to the impact of adverse child experiences on major depressive disorder in adulthood. Okay? So you want your prompt to be as clear as this. Okay? Don't let ChatGPT guess what you want. Okay? Be as specific as possible. And then let's see what are the ChatGPT forced responses. Okay? It will for sure give you 10 research questions. The first one is, how do different types of ACEs differentially impact the risk of developing major depressive disorder in adulthood, and give you explanation, which is, I would say, a reasonably good research question. The second is, how does the timing of ACE affect the development of major depressive disorder in adulthood? Again, makes sense. The third one, do generic factors moderate the relationship between ACE and major depressive disorder in adulthood? The fourth one, how do resilient factors mitigate the impact of ACE on development of disorder? And I like this one a lot because I'm interested in the resilience factors. The fifth one, what are the new biological mechanisms underlying the relationship between ACE and depression? And number six, how do cultural and socioeconomic factors influence relationship? This is probably too broad, right? And but you can always refine it if you like. The seventh is, what is the role of attachment styles? This is interesting in the relationship between ACE and development of depressive disorder. And is, can early intervention program for children exposed to ACE effectively prevent the development of depressive disorder? So this is interesting, right? And number 9 is, do occurring mental health disorders interact with the relationship between ACE and disorder? And 10, what is the long-term effect of evidence-based interventions for dealing with ACEs? Okay. So those are probably a good start, give you some inspirations, but well, say that you are not entirely satisfied. You want to probably dig one of them, one may probably click to you, but you want further clarification, you want further ideas. And of course, you can keep going, right? So for the next prompt I ask is to dig deeper into one of the research questions. So I asked, well, thank you for the list you provided. I'm interested in the research question, and I quote directly the research question mentioned, how the resilience factor attenuate the impact of ACE on the development of disorder. But then I read some questions. I would say, well, first, I'm not familiar with the various type of resilient factors. And the second, well, the research question is just too broad. I want to narrow it down. Okay. So ChatGPT is going to respond to that by briefly explain each research topic. So here it listed, I asked another 10 specific research topics, build upon that research topic to make it narrowing down. And then we get more interesting results. The ChatGPT response is, first, the role of social support network in mitigating the effect of ACE. Very interesting, right? Second, the impact of positive parenting practices. Actually, one of my students did a dissertation on the positive parenting practices. And the third one is emotional regulation skills as a predictive factor. And number 4 is secure attachment and development of depressive symptoms. And self-esteem, influence of self-esteem, positive coping strategies, all those are different factors in the resilience factor. So, and I like this one particularly. This is my personal taste, of course. I am interested in physical activity and exercise, and I really is intrigued by this one. Of course, you can read the rest. I think most of them make a lot of sense. Okay? For example, spirituality, religious involvement, cognitive flexibility, optimum and positive effect, right? That make a lot of sense. But well, my personal taste, well, I'm biased because I'm interested in physical activity and dietary behavior. So I'm going to dig number 7. And you shouldn't stop. You can still work on this research question and ask for further help. So here I say, well, I want to explore the protective effect of physical activity and exercise against developing major depressive disorder, but I have some concerns. Okay, so I'm be very clear about what my concerns are. So first, I would say, well, there are many different types of physical activity and matters, and the time or stage of life in which physical activity occurs. For example, it is in childhood, emerging adulthood, right? What is type of study design I need? No, observational, intervention, right? So then I asked ChatGPT to suggest another 10 alternative research questions related to the topic, explicitly considering the different type of physical activity that matters, the time and stage of life, when physical activity occurs, and the study design. Okay. So I'm not shy by asking ChatGPT to brainstorm more about this actually pretty much narrowed down topic. Okay. And then, well, ChatGPT followed my guidance pretty well. It asked another 10 questions. One is about intensity physical activity, moderate versus vigorous, how that differentially impact depressive disorder among adults with a history of ACEs. And the second is the specific types of physical activity, aerobic exercise, resilience training, or yoga, right? The third one is the frequency of physical activity, right? Which makes a lot of sense because physical activity is often measured by intensity as well as frequency. And then, at what stage of life is physical activity most effective? This is interesting, right? Does it have to occur during the childhood or even in adulthood, physical activity is still helpful, right? And then the effectiveness of early life physical activity intervention on reducing depressive disorder. And you can go on, right? Biological mechanisms and whether physical activity can serve as an effective adjunct treatment, not the main treatment, but part of the treatment. So how long it's going to last, right? Is how long it's going to the effect is going to persist over time, and then other individual factors in moderation of the effect from physical activity to depression among adults with ACE, right? From, for example, genetic predisposition or severity of ACEs, right? So it gives you tons of ideas, right? But now I think I have made my decision. Okay, so I say, well, now I basically use two of them. So I use the idea of the frequency, and I also use the idea of intensity. Okay, so this is come with my research question, and I tell ChatGPT, suppose my research focuses on how engagement in physical activity as well as its frequency and intensity influence the development and severity of the depression in adults who have experienced ACE. And then I ask, well, no, I want ChatGPT to provide me with some background information and additionally some rationale behind the research. Okay. Now, well, this probably will serve as the introduction section, right? Why the topic is of importance, what is background information, and of course, you can also ask for citations. I didn't ask here, but you could, okay? And you can ask ChatGPT to fact check the existence of the citations, and GPT-4 usually don't hallucinate in this kind of questions. Well, GPT 3.5 hallucinate a lot. So let's take a look. The ChatGPT response, the research question, just repeat what I said, and then give you the background. The background is you can read the rest. I think they make a lot of sense. Okay? So talking about what is ACE and how ACE is related to mental health and overall well-being, and why we study physical activity in relationship to ACE. And there is also further provided the rationale, okay, regarding the justification of looking at this research question. And fair enough, it also gives you the importance of why this topic is of importance, not only from academic point of view, but also from the practicality point of view, right? How it's going to make a difference to people who suffer, who have ACE and suffer from depression. And of course, implications of your research, and as well as additional information. And additional information actually is pretty interesting because it's also actually talk a little bit about the potential confoundings. Okay? So we are going to talk about confounding in greater detail when we talk about study hypothesis. But here, well, hopefully by communicating with ChatGPT through this 4 very engaging and follow-up prompts, you have settled down with a concrete but innovative research idea. Okay, and now let's talk about the how ChatGPT could help to craft hypothesis for research. Okay, so think, well, isn't that human have to do that? Well, of course, you have to do that as a researcher, but ChatGPT could help. So that's the. Of course, you have the research question. My research question is from the previous one: how do engagements in physical activity as well as frequency and intensity influence the development and the severity of major depressive disorder in adults who have experienced ACE? Okay. And then I ask to delve deeper into the research question. I'm looking for 5 innovative and feasible hypotheses that I can investigate. Right? Those is still very broad because I want ChatGPT to not bounded by my hypothesis, but really go well beyond to look at in a holistic view. So these are the 5 hypotheses ChatGPT come up with based on the research question. So the first one is higher level of engagement in physical activity are associated with a reduced risk of developing major depressive disorder, right? Of course, that is a good hypothesis based on the research question, but there are some more interesting ones. For example, here, regular physical activity of moderate intensity is more effective in reducing the severity of major depressive disorder in adults with a history of ACE compared to low intensity physical activity. So it's a dose response effect, right? Very well. The third one is engaging in physical activity during childhood and adolescence can have long-lasting protective effect. Okay, so makes sense, denoting when the physical activity actually occur. And the fourth hypothesis is the productive effect of physical activity on the development of depressive disorder are mediated by improved stress response and new biological changes, right? So this is a little bit deviate from our own research question, but interesting, right? And the fifth hypothesis is the combination of physical activity and social support in a group setting. For example, group exercise classes and sports team have a stronger protective effect than individual physical activity. So I've never thought of this without chatting with ChatGPT, but now I think this is a brilliant idea. So I'm really interested in does social support related physical activities with working in a group is going to be better for individuals with ACE than exercising alone, right? So this is a topic I would never thought of without chatting with ChatGPT. So then again, the principle is don't shy to ask, right? So here I would say, well, no, I picked 2 hypotheses. One is the adults who have a history of ACE engaged in higher level of leader physical activity are likely to develop disorder compared to those who engage in low or no level physical activity, right? So this is a conventional hypothesis. But the second one is more interesting about the group setting, right? In a group setting, whether in the group exercise classes or sports team, people are likely to develop lower risk of developing major depressive disorder compared to those who are doing physical activity alone, right? And then I want ChatGPT to make the 2 hypotheses more precise and more specific. Okay, and then let's see how ChatGPT will respond. Now ChatGPT comes with a refined hypothesis 1. Based on 2 of the aforementioned hypotheses. The first one is adults with a history of ACEs who engage in leisure time physical activity of at least 150 minutes per week at a moderate intensity of 75 minutes. For those of you who are familiar with the physical activity guidelines, you know that is the cutoff for being physically active. Recommended by the American Physical Activity Guidelines. Right? So this refined hypothesis is definitely very testable, very specific, right? You can just go and probably test it out, right? Maybe collect some data or running some existing sector data analysis, right? And it actually also gives you explanations. It gives you explanation that actually those cutoff point, those recommendations come from World Health Organization, which is correct. But no, it's also mentioned, recommended by the American physical activity guidelines. And for the second hypothesis, it mentioned that among physically active adults who have history of ACEs, those who engage in group-based physical activity for at least 50% of their total leisure time physical activity have a lower risk. Okay. So this is quite interesting because it doesn't really make a dichotomized classification, right? People doing group physical activity versus people doing individual physical activity. The ChatGPT is smart enough to figure out it's not about dichotomized treatment, it's about intensity, right? Now, those response again, right? It's a percentage of the group-based physical activity among all physical activities. And of course, it's giving you explanations. You can read that, but then so that would probably it would be specific enough, hypothesis for you to test out, right? And then sometimes a lot of time actually hypothesis testing is related to theory, right? It comes from kind of health behavior, health outcome type of theory, right? So ChatGPT probably know all the theories worldwide. So you don't be shy to link your hypothesis based on a specific hypothesis, and you want based on a specific theory, right? So and I in a different research question, I would say, to what extent are warning labels on sugar sweetened beverages an effective strategy for reducing soda consumption, right? And then specifically proposed research hypothesis related to my research question based on the theory of planned behavior, right? All of you who are in public health must have known this important theory of planned behavior, but I want to build a hypothesis directly testing the theory of planned behavior. And then guess what? So ChatGPT comes with this, very nicely designed hypothesis. So warning labels on sugar sweetened beverage will lead to a decrease in soda consumption among those in the US due to a shift in attitude, subjective norms, and perceived behavioral control as proposed by the theory of planned behavior. And then it comes to explain all the terms. Okay, the first one is attitude, right? So attitude. The warning label, how warning label is going to impact people's attitude, right? And second, how the warning labels on sugar sweetened beverages are going to impact people's subjective norms, right? And how the labeling are going to impact people's perceived behavioral control, right? If you read all of those explanations, it makes a lot of sense, right? So that is if you have a theory in mind, you can always test your hypothesis against a theory or a number of theories. Or even if you don't know a specific theory, you can suggest ChatGPT to provide you a number of theories that fit into your research question, and then starting from there. And the third one, how ChatGPT is going to help you with literature review. Well, in many, many ways. Actually, I'm teaching the systematic review and meta-analysis, and many of you probably are my students. And specifically, we talk about in the systematic review protocol, there are 13 to 14 stages of systematic review. And what I can confidently say is that ChatGPT can help you with all the 13 or 15 stages to some extent. Of course, we can't cover them all. So here we just give you some taste. Right? So here, well, let's start with the simple ones, right? So I have a research question. Does mindfulness intervention improve the mental health of middle-aged adults with anxiety disorder compared to standard treatment, right? And then everyone in the literature review knows what is Pickles framework, right? So I ask ChatGPT to translate my research question in using the Pickles framework. And ChatGPT response, of course, is all much relevant. P stands for population, I stands for intervention, C for comparators, O for outcome, and S for study design. Okay, so basically matched out the research question to each of the Pickles framework. Okay, very nicely, no mistake as far as I can see. And now that's really past the limit, right? Doing something really difficult, not too difficult, but relatively difficult, really require a lot of expertise, especially when you do literature review. We spend 6 hours talking about how you design search algorithm, okay, in different databases. But can we automate this process? I would say to some extent we can. By using the so-called few shot examples, right? Few shot learning that we just talked about. So here, I would say, well, no, I give the context, right? I ask ChatGPT to become a librarian who is specialized in literature review and information retrieval, okay? And I provide the train of thought. Remember, we talked about train of thought. This is in practice, how we allow the machine to think step by step, train of thought, right? So I ask the ChatGPT to first break down the research question into 2 or more key concepts. Second, for each concept, identify closely related keywords and match terms. Third, to use the Boolean operator or to combine the keywords and match term within each concept. And fourth, use the Boolean operator and to combine the keywords and match terms across different concepts. Right? So we spent 6 hours to give our students detailed understanding of that. But now, well, let's see how ChatGPT is going to respond to that. First, remember, we need to give examples, right? Examples can help GPT understand what we're looking for. So here I'm going to give just one example. Okay. So I asked ChatGPT to consider, well, I have a research question, the influence of green space on obesity in China. Okay. And then I asked ChatGPT to follow the steps. First, identify the 3 key concepts. They are green space, obesity, and China, right? Not surprisingly. And next, develop closely related keywords and match terms for each concept. For example, the keywords for green space can be this one, the green is natural environment, all that. The match term for obesity could be overweight and obesity. And there might be other keywords, for example, body mass index, BMI, waist circumference, and use all to combine the keywords for the same concept for use and to combine different concepts. Okay. And after that, I give a concrete example. I give example, research question is this, okay? Key concept are the 3, and then I provide the entire search algorithm. Okay, so this search algorithm, if you don't worry if you don't understand that, if you have not taken the literature review class, but for those who have taken this, is immediately it immediately makes sense to you because this is the entire search algorithm that can be implemented in PubMed, okay, using the Boolean operators. And so the TIAB stands for title and abstract. Okay, it's a field name. And the match term, we do have some match term here. So this is pretty comprehensive, right? We have match term for obesity as well. Okay, we have some limiting factors, for example, location, language, and human study. Okay. And now the exciting part, right? I'll provide a new research question. Is the research question that we are interested in, right? About physical activity in relation to depression reduction among people with ACEs. Okay. And we provide the key concept, physical activity, major depressive disorder, adults, and ACE. Okay. And then see here, search algorithm, nothing, right? Why? Because this auto-completion. We ask ChatGPT to auto-complete the search algorithm we are looking for. Okay. Let's see how ChatGPT come up with. Okay. So ChatGPT repeat the research question, repeat the key concept, and here we go, the search algorithm. Okay, so it's pretty comprehensive. You can read about that, and actually, I tried this out in PubMed. It works pretty well. Of course, you can't really be naive and take this as granted and just use as it is, right? It's not optimized well. You still probably need to change here and there, but it's a pretty comprehensive one. You probably spend hours, if not days, to work out with this, right? But now you spend a minute, 2 minutes to come up with this without the help of a experienced librarian. Okay. And now this is not the end of it. This is just the beginning. Let's show you some more challenging tasks. Okay. So here, well, remember in the literature review, often you need to make a decision based on the title and the abstract. You need to make a decision. It is literature I want to include in my review. I want to exclude from my review. This is a pretty mentally challenging, but also tedious task, because you have to go through probably hundreds, if not thousands, of title and abstract to make sure that you screen everything to make a decision, right? Every single article, right? Can we automate the task? Well, to some extent, you can. So here, I instruct ChatGPT, telling ChatGPT that you are going to assist me in screening the title and abstract, right? And then you can't stop there. We can't do a less classified, less clarified prompt. We have to be very specific. So your answer should be indicated whether to include or exclude a publication, along with a brief one-sentence explanation of your decision, right? And then I provide my research question. And also remember, you need to provide your eligibility criteria, right? Eligibility criteria means the including criterion and excluding criterion. What are the criteria that allow you to include a study, and what are the criterion you use to exclude a study, right? So you can read off that. It's very much like a paper, right? In a systematic review paper, right? You define the study design, you define the study subjects, the exposure, the article type, the language used, and you're only for original studies. So if the study is not original, if a study has no relevant outcome of your interest, if study focus on children but not adults, if the article not published in English, you should exclude them, right? And then, still your best friend, few shot learning, right? You provide one example, and you provide the title, you provide the abstract, and then you provide a sample decision, right? So here the decision is exclude, because this article is a scoping review rather than original study, right? So you want, you want ChatGPT to differentiate right from wrong, then you need to provide both a right answer and a wrong answer, right? So you provide a second example, which is a positive example. You provide a title and an abstract, and after that, you provide a sample decision. Include this article investigating the role of this activity modifying the relationship between adverse child experiences and depression in adults. Okay, now exciting part, right? You provide another article title, an abstract, and then you ask ChatGPT to make a decision. So you intentionally leave that out. And then ChatGPT response exclude this article focuses on the impact of childhood maltreatment on depressive effect in adulthood, but does not specifically address the role of this activity. And what I can guarantee you is that this is the correct answer. Right? You should exclude this article. Well, there are many other ways ChatGPT can help with the literature review. So this actually is a table. Data extraction, you know how tedious the data extraction could be, also how detailed it is. This table is done by ChatGPT, not myself. Okay, I wrote the prompt, and ChatGPT does fill this table entirely for me. Okay, and even the format of the table is done by ChatGPT. We just don't have time to show all of this, but it's all in the book. I'm still actively working on. So there are other prompts that, for example, how we can select a research design and methodology, and ChatGPT can help you greatly in these aspects as well. But no, we can probably go one more example, but I do want to leave some time for people. I see many people posting on the chat, and many may have questions and need clarifications. So we will spend one more example, and then we'll go to your questions. Okay. Here, for example, I provided my research question regarding the role of food delivery services and online grocery shopping on addressing food insecurity and improving access to healthy food options among urban residents living in food deserts. Okay, it's a very challenging research question. And then I asked ChatGPT to weigh on the different study designs, and I give them all the study designs the ChatGPT can choose from: qualitative, cross-sectional, case control, retrospective, prospective, cohort, cross-experiment, pre-post study, RCT, and crossover trial. Okay, and that GPT to give me recommendations, okay, and give me explanations of pros and cons of those choices. Okay. And then ChatGPT talk about the pros and cons for qualitative study in specifically addressing my research question, cross-sectional design as well, retrospective cohort study, prospective cohort study, and quasi experiment, and pre-post study. So ChatGPT gave me a lot of advices. And then, guess what? So later on, what I did is I picked the difficult one, the cause experiment. For example, if I am naive, I don't know what is cause experiment, right? I'll ask ChatGPT in later prompts, what do you mean by cause experiment? What kind of cause experiment I can do? What are the analytical approaches for cause experiment? And guess what? After 2 other prompts, ChatGPT gave me the implementation code, the R code to implement the cause experiment myself. So we don't have time for that, but this is what ChatGPT gave me, okay? Including even the model specification, right? In R code for both the difference approaches as well as the instrumental variable approaches. Okay, and you can read the rest. What I will say, well, of course, no, I would say I know enough to tell that the answer is entirely correct. Okay, so we don't have time for more examples, but this just the example we give barely touched the surface of what ChatGPT could do. There are a lot more examples in the book. Probably I'm going to provide maybe 100 more examples on different aspects. Okay. So just for the sake of time, I'll stop here, and I'll welcome any questions and any thoughts and any comments.
Great. Well, your presentation generated a lot of questions, so I'm going to try to get through as many of them as possible. This first one, I noted this as well, that when you were giving your prompts, especially when you were revising your prompts to ChatGPT, you used some very kind language to the machine. You know, you said things like, "Thank you for your ideas." And this person was wondering, does like emotional or conversational tones make a difference at all with ChatGPT, or is that just your own nice personal style, Dr. An?
That's a great question. Yeah, I appreciate someone noticed that. Yes, I'm a kind of person who try to be kind all the time. So I don't think we should diminish our human dignity even we communicate to a machine. So some philosophers argue that machine don't suffer, so it doesn't really matter. There's no so-called machine abuse because machine can suffer. But well, I'll argue the opposite. I'll argue that it is for the protection of our human being that we want to express always in a consistent, in a way that show our courtesy, our politeness. So rather than self-hurting ourselves, if we say something that is demanding, that is probably diminishing. So I would say this is more of a personal style, but I don't think that matters. But no, who knows? Maybe one day machine becomes sentient and self-aware. Then we should be really careful.
Yeah, I love that answer. Okay, very different question here. Could you maybe speak to your thoughts on how you could address, how you could prevent the use of ChatGPT as a form of cheating for students?
Oh, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
Actually, probably some of my students are here. We actually develop a algorithm that can auto detect cheating. Basically, cheating is defined as using ChatGPT to complete the response to a prompt. Prompt is defined as a question, okay, a homework assignment, for example. So the paper is still under review, under peer review. And there are some already published algorithms that don't depend on prompt. For example, the GPT-0, I think it's called GPT-0, and also OpenAI, the creator of ChatGPT, also issued their own version of the model that are trained to detect sentences and paragraphs written by ChatGPT. So that's possible. The machine usually produces a likelihood or probability it's 90% likely this paragraph is written by ChatGPT or 30%. Okay. This I would say for my students in my machine deep learning classes, I actually encourage students to use ChatGPT to probably complete their code, identify and debugging code. To me, it's not a problem, but of course, no, it really depends, right? The different probably faculty have different preferences or understanding, and definitely, if you were to write with ChatGPT probably in your paper, making very sure that you cite the references, right? So no, because ChatGPT tend to hallucinate and sometimes doesn't provide the necessary references. That is something you need to address. You can't take for granted that ChatGPT write is non-copyrighted, so you can use in whatever way you like. You have acknowledged that you use ChatGPT to assist you. You also ask to acknowledge every contributors. If the idea is not yours, you have to cite the author's references.
Well, thank you. This question is about the version ChatGPT 4, asking like, what is it trained on? How often is it updated? Or is it continuously trained? Is it being trained on the questions being asked? Like, so how is that like a continuing process?
Right, that's another good question. Well, I'm not an OpenAI employee, so I don't have insider knowledge. So what I can say is first, the ChatGPT most recent version, GPT-4 version, is trained on probably using data up to September 2021, and it was trained and finished recently, probably a month ago. And the data that you provide to ChatGPT, if you do not opt out for exclusion, you can actually opt out. But if you do not opt out for exclusion of training, then later there's a possibility that OpenAI is going to use your data, upload it on maybe a prompt you write, and upload it to OpenAI, the platform, for further training. But the model is not continuous trained. It's trained up to a stage, and then probably later on they're going to train the model and fine tune again. It's going to be an update, but it's not, as far as to my knowledge, not continuous trained. It's not an online training mechanism.
This another question that I had as well in my head. How does ChatGPT have access to journal articles or databases such as PubMed or PsycInfo? Typically, like us humans, we have access to these publications through university credentials. So how does that work for a machine accessing these?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, OpenAI doesn't really tell how the data were created. My understanding is that a large percentage of data actually are stripped from the internet. So basically what you get from the internet for free is in the domain of the training. But no, there's no particular article that talk about the data. The data is secured in OpenAI. It's not open source data set. So you can't really look into the data to know exactly what has been used to train the model.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I was just looking at time and oh my goodness, all the other questions that are running in. I'm trying to get a variety here. Here's another kind of and you might not know this, but I will ask because I think it's an interesting one. What's the environmental costs of running ChatGPT? You know?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think it's publicly released, but what I know is that for training the ChatGPT model, it cost millions of dollars. Someone said it's $12 million for training the model once. Of course, the cost is substantial. And well, I guess what the audience is asking is not only the training, but also making inference, right? Because the model is trained and you ask a prompt, model give you a response. That is called model inference. Basically, the model is predicting what you're trying to ask. And that also has an economic cost for sure, because the model, even for inference, because it's so huge, it has billions of parameters, probably hundreds of billion parameters. So even for making inference, has a economic cost. But I don't know exactly what that cost is.
And thank you for that answer. I think I misspoke. The question was actually about environmental costs. So for example, how like Bitcoin has, or generating of things like that is not great for the environment. Is there any sort of similar situation with running a ChatGPT?
Oh, exactly. Yeah, do you talk about carbon dioxide, the greenhouse gas emission? That's, of course it is, because the machines are running with multiple GPUs and many CPUs and definitely contribute to electricity consumption. And we can't really overlook that. Actually, no, we can spend an hour to talk about how we deal with that. That's a different issue regarding model pruning, data pruning, and how we we make the model smaller and more sparse in order to deal with this kind of the issues. So that is a very interesting topic of its own, but I'm afraid we don't have time for a thorough discussion on that. But appreciate it.
Try to cram in one last question about like a bigger ethical ideas. So, ChatGPT is obviously very powerful with research and a number of things. And what do you think that means for the future of academia, specifically with research and some of the ethical issues around people doing their own work, people using critical thinking skills, things like that? Just your kind of overall statement on the ethical use of ChatGPT.
Right. The short answer, this is a great question, but the short answer is no one knows the answer, right? We don't have the critical ball to look into the future. We have enough to deal with, even just for the current application of ChatGPT, not to say probably in a few years, we may have sentient machines, we may have machines that are surpassing our human capacity of understanding. Maybe the machine can feel, and then how we deal with the responsibilities, the legal, ethical, policy, regulative implications are paramount. And we have little clue about that, any of that. So I would really encourage everyone to look into those issues and try to actively search for meaning and search for answers.
TBD, right? Yeah, that's something we all need to think about. So we're 1 minute over, so I'm going to go ahead and close out. Thank you so much, Dr. An, for your presentation today, as well as everything that you've done for us on AI with Open Classroom. I put a link in the chat to where you can find recordings of past programs. There was a part 1 to this one, and then also Dr. An has organized a few other Open Classroom talks on the topic of AI, machine learning, ChatGPT, stuff like that. So you can check those out. I will again just plug his fall upcoming advanced certificate in AI. There's a link to that as well, where you can sign up to learn when the dates are available and when you can register. That's open to anybody, not just WashU students, open to anyone, anywhere. One last thing, would you be willing to share your presentation on our website?
Oh yeah, definitely. But the at the current stage, probably only the presentation part, but not the Word document, because I'm still actively working on the book. But hopefully we are going to get that done over the summer. Yes.
And yes, be on the lookout for the book, as that will, I'm sure, give so much more information and go so much deeper into this very interesting topic. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you for your excellent questions. And thank you, Dr. An, for your great work and your willingness to share it with us.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.